Hey guys, welcome again to my channel. So our today's video topic is integrating Stripe payment gateway into the Laravel. So I have installed the fresh Laravel and open it in my text editor. Then it's my Laravel database where we are going to store our payment details. And to integrate this Stripe library into the Laravel, I am going to use this Omnip Stripe library. Omnip is a popular payment processing library and it allows to integrate different kind of payment gateway easily into your application. Now from this library I am going to use Stripe payment intents into our application. So this payment intent handles both type of card, means the card which require two-factor authentication and the card which can charge directly. So both type of cards supported by this payment intents API, and these are the payment elements, means using which you can generate the form to enter the card details. This is the way secure than the regular HTML form elements. So I recommend to use these Stripe elements and gives the user fields to enter their card details. You will get the link of this page in the description below. Now let's get started. So for getting started, we require our API keys of Stripe account. So these API keys, like you need to grab your publishable key and secret key. Now I just define those constant here. Stripe currency. Now I will put my keys here and close this file. Now next, to store our payment details, which required to create the table in the database. So for this I am running the migration command, and it's PHP artisan make migration, and let's give a table name as payments. So PHP artisan make migration create payments table. Now open the migration file and define our columns here. So for this, table ID, then table payment ID. Now this column will hold the transaction ID of our Stripe payment. Next one will be payer email. Now to store the amount, I use the float data type, and finally store the currency. So for currency, I put the USD in our environment file. That means all our payment will be charged in USD dollar. And finally, store the payment status which we get from the Stripe API. Now run our migration. Migrated. Now go to database here our payment table is created. It has these columns. So we will store data to this table in the later part of tutorial. Now after this, let's create the blade file. Now come to resources, views, and I call it payment blade. Fine. Now I think instead of typing each code manually, let me copy paste it. It will be faster, and then I will explain you what that code does. Okay, so here at first I have included style.css which we will create in the next step, and here I have included JS file from this Stripe. I shown you this Stripe elements part. So using that, I am following their instruction, and they require to include the JS file. Here we are printing the messages, success message and error message, which we will get after the payment completion. Now here I have taken two fields, for one is for amount and one is for email. Now these are the elements. Inside this div, few fields to enter our card details will generated dynamically. Then this is the publishable key variable, and I have assigned our value which I getting from environment file, and finally I included card.js file, and in this JS file I am going to write the code which generate the elements dynamically inside this div. So at first we have to create these two files, css style.css and then JS. As I am using asset, these files will be inside public. So public css, then style.css, public js, car.js. Now one thing to mention, as I am copy pasting this code, so I am giving the article link in the description below. I have already written the article regarding this topic on my blog, so you can visit that article and grab this code. Okay, so for style.css, let me copy the code. This is my style sheet properties. Then for car.js, okay, so this is the code for car.js. Now here what I am doing is I am passing the publishable key value here, which we have defined here, and then these JS files process all the form elements. It also handle this submission of form, and finally means when we enter our card details, so this JS file does means append one hidden field inside our form, which has named the Stripe token. So the value of this Stripe token will act as an identifier for your card. That means we are not sending your actual card details on this server side. Instead, we are sending token value which are generated on the Stripe end. So this makes our application more secure, as we never interact with the card details. We never store users' card details. Now next thing is we need to define our route to call our blade file. So I got get method, let's give the name as payment and payment controller. payment controller index. Now we need to define this controller. We need to create this controller. PHP artisan make controller payment controller, and here to the form method I have passed the action URL as charge, so we need to define that route as well. Route, so it will be post charge. I keep the method name also as a charge. Okay, so yeah, looks pretty good. Now let me open one more terminal, split it, PHP artisan serve. Now let's visit our page / payment. All right, we didn't define our methods yet. Payment controller. Public function index return view payment. Now these are the two fields which we created, and these form fields are generated on the Stripe end. Fine. Now next thing is integrating Omnip library. So here on this documentation, first we need to install this package using this composer command. So copy the command and paste it here. So package is installed, and as we need to store our payment information, let's create the model for it. Make model payment. Okay. Now here in the documentation they have given these steps which needs to perform for payment intent, but they are giving it for I can say for core PHP. We are going to fit it into the Laravel. Now if you see these parameters, where it is like this, return URL, we need to pass one return URL. Means what happen is when the card require two-factor authentication, so on successful authenticating card, Stripe require the one URL where should user redirect, and on that URL we have to capture the user's payment as they have successfully authenticated. So for this I am defining one route called confirm. It will be get confirm. Yeah, now I am going to use this route as a return URL. Okay, fine. So to use the Omnip, first we need to include the I can say facade, use Omnip, and let's include our model as well. App models payment. Then we need to pass our secret key, and we need to create payment intent object which will require in our charge and confirm method. So I am defining class variables for that, gateway and public complete payment URL. Now let's define our constructor. $this my class variable Stripe / payment intents. This set API key, and for this we have passed the value in our environment variable, and my constant is Stripe secret key, and then to this variable I will set my confirm route. Let me correct the spelling. Complete okay. Now when we submit the details, control come inside the charge method, because we are posting our form data to the charge route. So the charge if request input. Now as I explained before, what Stripe does is it append the one hidden element called Stripe token. So what I do is, if this element is set, then only proceed for payment. Let's assign this value to one token variable. Now here on the documentation, fine. So here you can see proceed to authorize or purchase using charge API. So we need to authorize. We need to write this authorize code, and here you can see I am not going to use this key value pair payment method. Instead of this I am going to token, which they have mentioned here. If you have a token, instead of payment method you can use the token parameter. So what I do is, first I copy this code, paste it here. Now here my gateway is $this gateway. My amount is request input amount. My currency is I set into the my environment variable Stripe, which is USD in my case. Stripe currency, this is a test purchase transaction. You can add any description for your purchase. Now instead of payment method I am using token and passing my token variable here. Token. Now my complete payment URL as this complete payment URL, this one, and confirm true. Okay, so upon authorize, if response is successful, so I go to here, this one. If response is successful, first I think I copy this code here first. If response is successful, it will be capture payment. Now on this document you will not see the code for capture, but I have find out from the Stripe documentation, which I am going to here. And this capture is for the card which doesn't require two-factor authentication, so that once this card is authorized directly, we can capture the payment. So for this, response $this gateway capture then for this we need to pass our amount, then currency, and finally payment intent reference. Get payment reference. Now once we capture the payment, we need to store this data. So I am assigning this data to one variable, response get data. Then I will define one common method to store payment details, because we need to store our payment detail in two conditions: for the card which doesn't require authentication and for the card which require authentication. And for that code, for that process, we will write the code in the next step. So first let me store this payment. My method name is store payment, and my column names will be here payment ID, array payment data of ID. This variable contains our transaction ID. Then payer email, which will comes from the my form input email. Then amount, array payment data of amount divided by 100. Because why I'm dividing by 100, because if you print this variable, you will get your amount into multiply by 100. Means I don't know why is Stripe doing that, but this is the way Stripe works. Now next is currency. And finally it will be payment status. And finally it will return to our payment page and print out this success message. With success, payment is successful, payment ID is array payment data of ID. Now this will be for one-time payment. Now next condition is, what if card require two-factor authentication? In that case, it should be redirect to the bank's hosted page. So Omnip handle it using the is direct method. Response redirect. Yeah, but once the user comes back again, we will require our payer email. So let's store it inside the session. Payer email request input payer email. The code is simple. If the card required redirection, it will redirect to the bank hosted page. And if both conditions are failed, that means there is some error. Return redirect payment with error, and whatever the error we get from the Stripe API. Okay, fine. Then next thing needs to do is define the confirm method. So public function confirm. Request. If you get the documentation here, upon the confirming authentication, we need to confirm it on the API end. So we need to use this code. Paste here this. Now payment reference we will get from the get parameter on the returning URL. Return input payment intent, and my return URL is this. You can use the DD request here like this, DD request, and you will see the all parameters you get on the return URL, and in that you can see this payment intent in the get parameter. So same, if response is successful, I can copy this line here. Let me grab this code and then we will modify it. If response is successful, okay, so here also we need to capture the payment. So request input amount, currency is like this, and payment intent reference we will get from here. Then again, on capturing payment, get the data and pass it to the store payment. So here payment ID, payer email we get from the session. So I use session of payer email. We set this variable here, payer email. Then amount will be same, Stripe currency is same, status will be same, success message right, and else. So this else will be same. If response is not successful, there must be some error from the API end. Fine. Then finally we need to define this method to store our transaction details. Public function store payment, array data, so at first we need to define our object. Fine. Then payment of payment ID, which will be array data of payment ID. Now let me grab this code. Next column will be payer email, amount, currency, payment status. So here payer email. Next is amount. Then currency. So currency I am getting from environment. Finally, payment status. And call this save method. Okay, fine. I think it should be good, and we can test the payment. Now to test the payment we require dummy card. So Stripe, I think some error occurs. Okay, we will check it. Here they have provided 2 dummy cards. This card doesn't require authentication and this card require authentication. What's the error? Set API key does not exist. Right. I forgot to write gateway here. Gateway. Okay, so let's first test with 4242 card. Now I am passing the amount as 10. Now dummy email is, I am writing one dummy email which doesn't exist on my domain. Card number is 4242. And submit. Undefined index ID on 52. 52. It should work actually. Let me dump it. Array payment data. Amount to capture 1. What I did wrong? Oh, right. In the capture method, I think I make one mistake. This send should be here. Capture, then here also send. test it again. Submit. Why is happening, man? Store shit. I made this simple mistake. Store payment. Store payment. Then store payment. Yeah, payment is successful and I got the payment ID. Now let's refresh it. We got the entry here also. Fine. Now we can go ahead and test the card which require two-factor authentication. So I'm copying this card. This time I set the amount 15. This number you can enter anything. Then submit payment. Now it's returning to right. So of course we are testing the sandbox payment. So they have mentioned like this: in live mode, customer will be asked to verify their identity with text message. Means this is the sample page, sandbox flow. So that we have to manually verify our authentication. So I click on complete authentication. Column payer email cannot be null. SQL into payments. I think payment is successful, but we didn't get the value of payer email. That's why this error throws. Let me check. Here session payer email seems correct. I think session payer email request input payer email, this one, and we are accessing here session payer email. What is wrong in it? Yeah, I got the error. It should be email, not a payer email. Fine. Okay, so let's try it again. Payment, copy 15, submit, complete authentication, yeah, your payment is successful and I got the payment ID like this. So yeah, that's it. So I hope you guys understand integrating Stripe payment gateway into the Laravel. And if you like the tutorial, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching video. Have a nice day.